Okay, so then I will carry on with the second module. So as I said initially, um, yeah, in the meanwhile, you can keep writing your questions in the chat box. Whenever I'll finish this part, I'll look at that chat box and then can reply to your queries. Don't hold it um, in your mind. So now, as I said, the focus is how to design a digital system. So let's try to first understand that how a typical digital system is designed. Okay, so the typical design process is something like this. It will first start with specification. Specification means you have to tell that what do you want to design. So specification means a lot of things. Specification means what is the functionality, what is the behavior. And when we talk about behavior and functionality, so this could be at different level of granularity. So first level of granularity could be a simple, we say that, let's say, let's talk about multiplication. You simply say that I want to multiply numbers. That's one level of specification, but there could be other level of specification where you say that, okay, there are, let's say, 32 bits there, 32 bits there, 32 bit A and 32 bit B. How do these 32 bits number will interact with each other? Okay, or so that it will it will be optimized, it will take less time. So that's also a level of specification. Given, and also how much time a particular system should take, how many cycles a particular system should take, how many bits are there in your input and output interfaces, and how interfaces are talking to each other, that means protocol. So all those things are part of specification. Okay, so once we have freeze that specification, after the specification, then synthesis process will start. Synthesis is a very generic journal word for saying that going from specification to the end output is called synthesis. Here, synthesis could be of different nature. So it could be, if your input is specification is behavior in nature, then it would be behavior synthesis. So similarly, if your specification is sort of a logical input, okay, so then this synthesis is also called logical synthesis. Output of synthesis would be the end circuit. Circuit means how each gate is connected to other gate. That's the level of output we require at the end of synthesis process. Okay, so in parallel, there also will go a verification. Verification means that whatever we want to specify, so there is a specification you would like to give, whether that specification is complete, whether that specification itself doesn't have bugs or issues. So all those things are called verification. Okay, so for example, you want to design a smart home solution. In smart home solution, whatever realistic inputs would be there, those realistic input you will try to give to the specification, and then you see what are the outputs, whether those outputs are expected outputs or not. Is all verification. So similarly, this verification also has to be done after the synthesis process has been completed. So you see, the after specification, synthesis will go on, and in the synthesis there could be various possibilities of the implementation. That implementation again could be different than the specification. So how would we see whether the circuit is same as the specification? We'll again verify. So in this verification, we will again see whether whatever output is expected, whether that output is correctly expected or not. So if the output which is coming and the expected output they are same, that means system is good. Okay, so if there is a bug, if there is the specification output, or basically expected output, and the output which is coming from circuit is not same, what we do? We will change the specification, or we will change the way or the details in that specification so that the expected output is same. Now, from the last 2-3 minutes, whenever I'm saying specification, this would be a little bit confusing. What actually is the specification? So let's try to understand this a bit more. One way of specifying, we'll say that in a plain English words. So let's say whatever, when I say I want to multiply, this is the English specification. Okay, but there's no detail here. You don't know how many bits to multiply, how much time it should take, how many resources, how many gates should it take. So there's no detail here. It's all ambiguous. And also because of this English language, or it could be in Hindi, Telugu, Punjabi, whatever language. So whenever you are writing in a plain English language, there is a good scope of ambiguity. Okay, so ambiguity means that you might have observed that whenever a question comes in your exam, there would be two different students which will interpret that question as a different question, different interpretations. That's the problem with the English language. So that's why, to make our specification very precise so that there is no two different meanings, then we have to shift from English language to more specified grammars, or to more concrete or to more accurate grammars. So that's why we many a times we use this high level language, which is called C, C++, Java, Python, all those languages, because at least we know that there is no two different interpretations. Okay, because there is no two different interpretations, so at least whatever we are saying, that would be correctly specified there. And people who know C, they can understand what it means, that any programmer will interpret it in the same way. Okay, so this high level language provides a good framework for functionality specification of any product. Whatever we want to design, if we want to specify the functionality, that can be written very well in C, C++, Java, Python, or any other high level language. Okay, so but these high level languages are good for functional meanings, or good for functional or behavior syntax, but they are not very good in describing the hardware. They cannot be very good hardware specification language, because in hardware, not only functionality or behavior, but there are other things also which is involved. For example, timing is the most important factor. Concurrency is most important factor. That which two modules will work in concurrent. What is the bit width of every signal? At what time a particular module will get triggered? So all that information, if we would like to incorporate in C and C++, I'm not saying that it is not possible, but it will make that particular C, C++ language very cumbersome, and also not very easy to write. But still, it will lack some behavior which we cannot specify, which we can specify in, which we have to specify a hardware. So that's why we have to have a more accurate description language which can describe the hardware. Okay, so which can describe the behavior as well as the timing aspects, as well as the concurrency aspect, which two components can be done in parallel. Okay, and if we go from this slide back to our original slide, now you can understand that if there is a bug in the specification, the expected output doesn't change and does not meet the expected, your output doesn't meet the expected output, then you have to change the specification. That means you have to rewrite your C functions, rewrite your Verilog or VHDL functions, so that specification can be done better. Okay, so with this, next step is synthesis. Synthesis means that we have to design, or we have to convert from the specification to the circuit. Now, if specification is a behavior one, now we can have an automated flow. In automated, you will write a Verilog code, and from the Verilog code, you will put a synthesis button, and it will get it synthesized into a netlist. That's one is automated one. Similarly, there could be a behavior synthesis also where you specify not in hardware description language but in C, C++, complete behavior. So from behavior, it will intercept the whatever hardware details are required. Those would be find out by the behavior synthesis tool. So that is what an automated one. Okay, but sometimes this automated one will not be very good because of a couple of things that you would like to understand how things are going, and because many times you have your own idea that this is how my system should be, this is how a design should be. Then you will go for a manual one. And when we are going for a manual, again there are two methods. One method is we go for an ad hoc approach. We don't know what we are doing. So given a question, let's say you have a question or you want to design something, and then you start with anything. You don't know like how you are going. You're reactive in that nature that whenever a specification will come, based on the specification, you will start implementing it. The other, if we somehow create a standard specific procedure, if you follow that procedure, then you certainly would be able to get a decent design and within the less time. Okay, so even if it is manual, then also we can create a procedural or a systematic flow. And this is what we will try to do in this module. Okay, so before going ahead, there is also one interesting thing which I have touched upon in a couple of last slide back. So this abstraction level could be very much different. So again, I take the example of multiplication. So when we say multiplication, it could be just an behavior that I have two numbers, I have to multiply. Now, how many cycles it will take to multiply? That would be a different level of detail. Let's say this multiplication will take 2 or 3 cycles. 2 cycles. So okay, so 2 cycles, that means output of my first cycle would be stored in a register. And that particular level is called register transfer level. And then the next level of detail, that how each gate is interacting with the other gate, that's a gate level abstraction level. And then you see each gate is also consists of various number of transistors. For example, if you take a CMOS technology, then your 2-input AND gate would require 4 transistors. If you take BJT or some other TTL implementation, number of transistors would be different. Okay, so these are different abstraction detail levels. And if we take about multiplication, that is one, but let's talk about something more complex. Let's say we would like to design some image processing in hardware. Okay, so you see hardware can be much faster than software, so that's why you design hardware for most of the accelerators, etc. So you would like to accelerate some particular image processing task. Now, when you do that image processing task as an algorithm, you write it in a C or C++. You say that this image is the input, and this particular operator, Sobel operator or gray2 YUV operator. So these operators you would like to apply. So now you have written that that operator in terms of for loops and process that image. That would be algorithm or behavior. Now, if you are able to convert that particular behavior or that particular algorithm into a register transfer level, means you know that each and every cycles which operations are happening. So that means at the end of register transfer level, you know that this particular image processing task would be able to finish in this many number of cycles. Register transfer level will guarantee that if you have written in register transfer level, RTA level, that the number of cycles will be guaranteed, but you don't know how many or what operations are happening in one particular cycle. For that, you have to go for a logical synthesis, and then you will have this gate level abstraction. Okay, and then transistor level abstraction is another one. Okay, so in our digital design phase, we typically go for either a register transfer level or maximum at the gate level. Whenever we are designing at register transfer level, after that we are usually confident that our synthesis tool will take it over from there and then can design a very nice gate level netlist. Okay, so most of the goal here is we have to specify here, and after that we have to convert into register transfer level specification. Now, the same thing can also be understood from this domain of digital system, which is called Kasky's Y chart. So these Y charts specifically clearly specify that you have three domains: behavior domain, structural domain, and physical domain. So we actually start from the behavior domain. Either we specify algorithm, we say specify system, or we specify register transfer level. Then we correspondingly go in a structural domain. So for example, from register transfer level, we can directly go for gates. That's called synthesis, logical synthesis. Or from RTL, we can also go to this ALU level, or basically structural domain, where things are at the level of operations, not at the level of gates. Okay, so this synthesis process will result in behavior domain to structure domain, and both of these two domains are interacting heavily whenever we are designing. Okay, so whenever we are going for more detail, we are traveling towards the center. So from the algorithm, we go to register transfer level, or logic level, or transfer function level, and we get into more and more details. And similarly, when synthesis is done, after that again we go for verification. We go back here, and sometimes we also verify within the same. So as discussed before, that once the specification is there in the behavior domain, then again we'll apply this verification flow to see whether our specification is correct or not. So one more thing here, that once we reach this level of register transfer level, and after that this Verilog will take over, and these synthesis tools are mature enough that they can reach to the gate level and then transistor level. And these transistors are usually in form of libraries. So there is a one-to-one mapping of each transistor to transistor layout, and then we can go for the cell layout, module layout, load plan, and the whole physical partition of the chip. So the target for our digital design is mostly to reach a nice specification, complete specification, which is correct, which can be synthesized, and after that mostly synthesis tools are matured enough. Okay, so the second part would happen, this particular part from this structural domain to physical domain is called physical synthesis. Yes. Okay, so now one more thing here, that there are two ways of designing system. One, that we start from the system specification, and from system specification we go to the behavior algorithm specification, or from the system specification we go back here and we see that which part need to be implemented on processor, which part need to be implemented on accelerators, and where the interconnects would take place. And then based on this information, this transaction, then again we go back to the algorithmic level, and then the register transfer level of each and every module. Okay, so this is called top-down approach, where you are starting with a system specification and then going into detail. Okay, the other could be bottom-up approach. In bottom-up approach, you will first design the transistor, or we can also say you will first design the cells, and from the cells you will design the gates, and from those gates you will design probably some components. Okay, so for a particular technology like memories, you take this approach, bottom approach. You first design one memory cell, and from that one memory cell you will say that, okay, now any number of cells could be put in a form of array and then can be designed. Okay, so they can be put together, and then you will form the system. Okay, so this way there could be a top-down approach. It is usually followed in it is usually followed in application specific circuits, where you have to design a circuit for a specific application. So because you are designing a circuit for specific application, so you have to start from the specification, and after starting from the specification, you have to go into detail. The other, where the module is very regular, you will start with the bottom approach like memories. But now the question is like, if you want to go for a design which requires designing of 1 billion transistors, billions of gates, which approach would be good? So the approach which is currently being followed by industry is an hybrid approach. In hybrid approach, what happens that from the transistors you create gates, and from gates you create a library of cells, which is also sometimes called standard cell libraries. And from standard cell libraries, you again create different components which can be reused at multiple places. You might have heard of this term, intellectual property, IP. They call it IP blocks. So these IP blocks are designed by different companies, and they are offered as a component, or they're offered as an off-the-shelf component that you can buy that particular component. So for example, your USB controller, your HDMI controllers, these interfaces are quite popular. Similarly, small microcontrollers, microprocessors, they're also part of that system. Now, from the top, you will start with the specification. Now you will choose that which component I can employ to complete this specification. So this way, there would be some design which is going from bottom up. You are creating some IPs, and from the top, you are selecting some of those IPs, and whatever is not able to finish by those IPs, or sometimes this is also called glue logic. So some additional logic which would be required for interfacing that off-the-shelf component to your system would be designed by you. Okay, so this way, this hybrid approach is best of two worlds, and because of this approach, because of this IP and platform-based approach, people are able to design sophisticated SoCs. Your mobile SoCs, whatever chips SoCs are used in your mobile phones, they have billions of transistors, and they are shipping a new version of mobile every year or every 6 months, because the design process is fast and efficient. Okay, so one thing that is the almost last slide of this particular part of the session, that whenever we are designing, we also need to see what is our objective. Objective could be, first most important objective is the cost. Okay, so some 30 years back, cost used to have only one meaning area. How many gates? More gates, more cost. But these days, because of Moore's law, transistors are cheap. Now, there are other set of costs which are also important. Now, interconnection has become a very important cost, that how many interconnect lines I would require. More interconnections, difficult to route. So also, complexity has increased, but you see the physical number of pins is not scaling. You still have those limited. So for example, 240 pin package or 344 pin package. So those number of pins in your package are still fixed, but inside functionality has increased tremendously. So these number of pins are also a very important cost factor. Now, area is not a cost, but verification is a cost. So more number of transistors would require more testing, more verification time. So these are all cost factors. The other important thing is performance. That better the performance, higher it will sell. So performance means how many gate delays would be there, how many number of cycles would be there, and then we go into detail. Then it can mean that it depends on interconnection, it depends on fan in, fan out. All of these things depends. Like finally, it tells you that what is the performance. Nowadays, power is also an important one, because most of these devices, whatever we have to design, they are used in embedded space. In embedded space, they are mostly run by a battery, and for battery, your energy is the most important thing. You don't want to recharge your battery every time. So, for example, if you're buying a phone, you would like to buy a phone which can last at least 1 day, Previously, we used to say that your phone has to last at least 7 days. So we have brought down our requirements or expectation from the mobile companies that at least it has to stay for 1 day. Now, company will say that your phone can stay for 7 days if you don't use it, or if performance is slow. If you put a touch, it doesn't respond. That way, it can always be made to lie long. But that's why your power with performance is always a objective. You have to perform well, but power has to be less. So that's why in most of the cases, whenever we are designing, my objective is not only functionality but also to minimize cost, to minimize area, to minimize to maximize performance, also minimize power. Okay, so with that, these are the reference books. If you want to study anything, this is what I usually follow, and they're very beautifully written books. Yeah, so with this, I'm done with part 2. Now, if you have questions, then I can answer those.